Okay, so I'm Jan. I work at Kundi and also D-Labs. And at Kundi we do this project, RankTrackr. So I'm actually gonna go from the start on this gem. I already mentioned it some time ago, but I changed a lot of stuff. Basically, it's not what it was back then. And so I was reading this post by some guy. It was in Ruby Weekly in November. And he was comparing the performance of JBuilder and active model serializers. And I did have a case some time before that where I needed to spit out a lot of data from the database very, reasonably fast, but it was like, I don't know, 10,000 records or something. And at that point, I saw that what's taking the most time is instantiating the active record objects. So in that case, I just got a hash from the database and just returned that through the API. So here it got me thinking, maybe I can write a serialization library that works like that, so that it would skip the active record object, because a lot of the time you just need to usually just display the data straight from the database, just select which fields you want, or sometimes you need some logic, but so that was the original idea. After I did that, I wrote this guy who wrote that post, and he said, it's nice, but we need to improve existing libraries. And at that time, I was like, I didn't take this too seriously, but so like a week or 2 weeks later, I realized maybe he's right, because it's really hard to make a new library and then get people to use it and get people to contribute to it and stuff like that. And actually, this happened again later. So sometime later, he said, do you want to add this functionality to active model serializer? Actually, when I did that hash serialization thing, I also made it so it did the query for just the fields that you needed for serialization. So that's what he meant here. Basically, so you could use active model serializers, but have the optimized queries for that. So I started working on that, and I did it. Because I use SQL a lot, I already put in support for both SQL and active record at the start. So it's modular in that sense. Other frameworks can be used. And for the serializer part, I used active model serializers, but also it's the same principle. You can write an adapter for some other. For JBuilder, it wouldn't work as good because you need to ask the serializer which fields it needs, and JBuilder doesn't work like that. It's like a procedural code, so for JBuilder it wouldn't work as well. But there are some other serializer libraries that would work. So this was the start. So basically, here, this is just normal AMS serializers. And what I did was you just put the gem, the Datasource gem into your project, and you get a query like this without having to do includes on the, in this case, user includes posts. It would just do that automatically. And it also did this selective select. So in this case, because the user serializer only exposes the ID, it will only select the ID. And because the post serializer only exposes ID and title, it will select those and user ID because it needs it do the to connect the post with the user. So that looks really cool, and it works good for simple cases like this. But the problem is you can have like methods that use certain columns from the database, but I can't guess where you use it. So, like in this case, this method, it's not a field in the database, but it does use a field from the database first name, and Datasource can't know this. So this was my solution at that time. So you have to declare, for methods, you have to declare what the dependency fields are from the database, so then it can do the optimized select. And at the moment this is still in, but I'm thinking of removing it because it just makes like, especially if you already have a project and you add this gem in, then you have to add all of these declarations, and a lot of the time it won't make a big difference if you don't select two fields or something. I will keep the option to do it, but it will be a little bit harder to, like, maybe you will say in the serializer you want to skip a certain field or something like that. So this was just kind of the evolution. And at the start I even had my own serializer class that you could use. But yeah, there's no point in doing that because we already have so many good libraries. So I will just show you how this works, basically. And also, when did I start? So I know the author, do you know? When did I start?
December, I think.
No, what time I started?
30, so yeah, don't worry. You have plenty of time.
Huh?
You have like 20 minutes.
Yeah, I know, but just I want to like.
18:30.
Okay, cool. I don't think it's a problem if it's longer for 1 minute. Okay. I'll just do a clone of the screen. Okay. So, what's that?
It's a feature.
Live demos. Okay, no. I'll put it back. Maybe it's okay. Okay. So here I have just a normal Rails app with a few models, and that's all. I don't have any special gems or anything. It's like just your kind of normal API thing. And here it's a lot of nested stuff. So there's a block which has this is a block, and then it has an owner, and it has posts, and the post has an author, and the post has comments, and the post has the comment has an author. So normally now you'd have to go to your controller, and you have to write here. You have to look at the response or at the queries, and then go write includes posts and blah blah blah. And why would you do all that stuff if it's already written in your serializer, basically? So the block serializer has one owner, has many posts. That's how you do the relationship serialization. So we can just use this information, and that's what this gem does. So here's the query for that. It was, well, this is just not very good at all, but because it does a query for each of the blocks, and then for each of the posts, it does a query for the comments and so on. So one goal of Datasource is to be very easy to just edit and not having to do really very much. So, and get instant satisfaction. At the moment I am using the GitHub version, but it's also released as a gem on Ruby Gems, but it's not the latest version, and I did a few changes. But at some point I will stabilize the API, and then it's like then you can expect it not to change. So this is the longest part of doing it.
Does your Wi-Fi work?
Yeah, it should. I'll just do that. Okay. Okay. So it's just a branch I had before, but basically what you do, just install add the gem and then run a generator. And the only thing that generator does is generate this initializer, which you have to specify which framework or which adapters you want to use, and also the simple mode, which means it's disabling the selective things, selecting the specific fields, because if you don't select everything, then you'd have to specify all these dependencies and all that stuff. Yeah.
So you said you disabled the select thing. You just select all of them, no?
Yeah, like users.asterisk. Because it's not a big performance improvement if you do like selective stuff. So I will probably remove this option altogether, like I said before. But okay, this is the default setting, is to enable simple mode. So. And here I also changed this. I added. It also has like some logging, so you see what's going on and why it's doing some queries. So I enabled this. Normally it's set to just warnings. Okay, so we did this same request, and now we can see I didn't change any of the other code. So I didn't change the controller, I didn't change the serializer. And so this is what the magic is. So it still selects all the blocks, but then it sees that these are associations, owners, and posts. So it will load them in a single query for each of those. And this part I will explain in a moment, because that's because I switched to the branch and there's some other stuff I want to show. So then the next step is for the post, it loads the author and comment in one query per each association, and then for the comments. The only thing I don't like at the moment, but this is the same as includes would work, it will do the query for the users for each of the separate associations. It won't do it all together. So right? Post authors and comment authors are the same thing, it's just users. So you could do it in a single query. But active record is kind of shit for doing that. But I plan to do it. But I will have to write the loading logic all myself. So it will take some time, maybe. For SQL, it will be probably much easier because it has a better, like, I'll come to that. Anyway, so this is much better than before when we had this huge amount of queries. Right. So this is just no effort, but then that's not the only point of this library. So there are this is all in the README, but I'll show you. For example, this is how you specify data source related information or something. So, but I want to show a different one first. Yeah, this one. So this one here, one thing you can do is you can declare you want to have an attribute on your model, or at least in the context of the serializer, which is generated from a database select. So in this case, I have in the database I have first name and last name, but I want to get a full name attribute that the database will generate for me. And this is the select that I wanted to use for that. So the double pipe in SQL is concatenation, so it will concatenate first name and last name and put a space in between. So this is why this is in the query. So Datasource adds that. And the reason it knows that we need to have this is because the user serializer has this full name as an attribute. And if it didn't, you have to write at the moment Datasource select full name. So if this was like something else, and then it would be a method. So that would still work. But in that case, you have to explicitly tell it. But at least I think this way is better than before when you had this computed, like you had to specify, before you had to write computed full name, this, comma, full name. So you specify the dependency. In this case, you just specify the dependencies for the whole serializer, and I think that's much easier for people to do.
So basically what you're doing here is offloading the work that Ruby should do to SQL.
Yeah, this example is not very useful. You wouldn't want to do that because concatenation is not slow in Ruby or something like. But maybe you want to do a join and do something like that. You know, takes one field from another table. So that's what the real use case is. In the projects where I use this, I didn't yet use this functionality, so I still have to polish a bit on if you want to do joins and stuff like that. But for the doing taking data from the same table, it works already. So, but the thing that I do use a lot is the loaded values. So I think with more complex projects, you a lot of the time you'll have a case where you want to load some data in one query for all the models, and this data is maybe in another table, or even it could be, I don't know, in Redis or in memcached or something like it. This doesn't even have to be in the database. So and this works like this. You have to you just specify the name with loaded. You say basically latest post title is a loaded value for blog. And then you have this collection block, and all the methods in this block will have access to a few methods that you can call, like model IDs. And this will contain, this is an array of all the IDs of the collection it's currently loading. So here you just, in this case, it will do a query for the last post. This is a kind of SQL agnostic way to do it. In Postgres, it would be something like distinct on blog ID and order by created at descending or something like that. So basically, you get the last post for each of the blogs that have this ID. And then here, I just want the title, so I plug the blog ID, which I need so I know which blog it's for, and the title. And then this from array here is a kind of helper that you just tell it that this will be the format that the method returns. So it will be an array of pairs, and the first thing in the pair is the ID of the model, like in this case of the blog, and the second thing is the value you want to assign. And when you, after you do that, when you call, this is a block, so you just, it's like any other attribute. So you don't even have to have a method for it or anything. It's just as if it was a column in the database. So you can also use it in methods inside the serializer, just like this. So just like it was a method on the model. And actually, in this case, I also wanted to have this when I'm not using a serializer, the same method. So this is the logic only for a single block. So for a single block, you just order the post, ascending here, but it's last, so get the last post and display the title. And what happens is actually when you do this, Datasource will wrap this method and overwrite it, and then it will check if it's being used in the serializer. Then it will use this implementation, and this will be a single query. But if you use it outside of serializer, then it will use this implementation. Or if you don't have this method, then you will get a normal no method error, just like if it didn't even exist. Okay. So I think that this one is, at least for me, particularly useful because a lot of times I have cases where I need this, and doing it by hand is very cumbersome, and there's no really nice way to do it. Usually, a lot of the time you will do it in the controller, and then you will pass it in via scope into the serializer, and then call like something on the scope to get to that data. But this way it's a lot nicer. Okay, so, but there's even a better feature. So one thing that I have a problem with, especially with this kind of stuff, is I write all this kind of logic how to load certain fields that don't really exist for the model. But then when I have the show method, a lot of time it will not be very reusable, the logic I used to preload for many models. In this case, where we actually had a method for a single one, it would not be a problem, but maybe you don't want to write that all the time. So you can also tell basically Datasource that you want to use it without having to actually use the serializer. And you do that like, normally you do blog find one, and this will do just a single query to get the blog, but then if I do the post, it will do another query and so on. But you can just call for serializer, before calling find. And then it will do the data source logic. So it will load all that stuff, and it will be accessible on the blog. So I can call last, well, let's do it like that. So last, what was it? Last post title.
No.
Flag demos? No, but it should work because I tried it before. Ah, it's latest. I knew it was a typo because when I was testing it, I also made the typo and I also looked like, oh fuck, it doesn't work. So as you can see, there's no query being done because it was already loaded before. But if I do just blog.find one and blog.latest, so in this case I'm not using a data source, it will do the query because now it's using this method. And if this method wasn't here, I would get a no method error. So this is also cool. And then to go one step even further, so I think it will do a query again here. So it will do it every time because I'm not caching it here without data source. But there's another cool thing is you can actually upgrade an existing model with the preloaded data. So but it's not as good, especially if you have query parameters, because it will still have to do another query to get those query parameters. But if you don't, then it's basically the same. And here it's not doing any query on the blocks because we already have the block and we don't use query parameters, but it will load all this other stuff. And now if I do this, it's not going to use a query anymore. So the only case where I wanted to have this is for current user. Because a lot of the time you will already load the current user in a before filter, but then in some cases you want to serialize it. And in this case, it's good if you can just upgrade instead of pulling it again from the database. And so in your show action, you would just do, you just need to do this first, so that you get the same preloading logic. Because I can, so here in this case, because I'm getting a scope, I can magically do the data source thing. But in the shell action, so like this. Here I can't really. Well, I could call for serializer now on it, but it's even better if you just do it because you know what you want. So in this case, I get an object, I don't get the scope, so I can't automatically upgrade the scope. So here you just have to call for serializer, and then it will use the same logic. Okay. Let me just see. Yeah. Okay, I won't show the advanced example, but basically you just set this to false. Well, I can show it, I guess. Maybe it won't work. I know it doesn't work for well, I'll do that. Okay, so in this case it works. So the comment has an author, and in this case it knows from the serializer which fields to select. So it doesn't do user.all anymore because it's the advanced mode. But yeah, it's probably I will remove it. So let me just check in the README if there's something else. Yeah, that's more. The other thing you can also do. Sometimes you wanna have some like you want to have this logic a little bit parameterized. So maybe in one controller you want some neons in one of the fields or something. You can also, when you do render, you can just pass these Datasource params. And then in the collection scope, you will have access to this params object where you can access this value from here. So maybe you want to skip loading the newest comments in one of the cases. I added this because I needed it in one of the projects, so sometimes it can be useful. Yeah, okay. Let's get on with, that's more or less it, but I'll say a few more things about how preloading works in Active Record and in SQL. So what I mean with preloading is basically includes, how includes works. So in Active Record, I knew from before that the API to preload stuff is not considered public, so it can change, and actually it does change a lot. Like every 4.0 it was different than 4.2, so they change it, and that sucks for me because I'm using it here in this gem. So I have to be careful to use it in such a way that those things weren't changed. So I asked them a lot, like, are you gonna make it public, basically? And the answer is, there is a plan to do it, and the plan is we should do it. So I have no idea when they will do it. Basically, how it looks. Okay. Okay, it's on the other screen. Just so you see how you can actually use that. I think it's something like this. Yeah, okay. So that's the class that they have. And then there are subclasses for different association types, like belongs to and has many true. And yeah, it's just like you pass it the record, you pass it the name of the association, and a scope that it uses to do it. But yeah, it changes a lot, especially if you would do some, like if I would to use the belongs to preloader, that one changes even more than this. At least this method didn't change for a while. So yeah. So that's Active Record. And in SQL, it's even, like, I don't even have to do that. I don't even have to use the methods because this eager is basically the same as includes in Active Record. But in SQL, you can actually pass a block to that, and this block will be called with the scope just before it's converted to an array. So here I will get the scope for the post, which already has a where user ID or whatever, where user ID is the IDs of the users, but I can add stuff to it. So for this gem, this is very beneficial because I needed to modify the select, especially before when I was doing selective select. So you can just, kind of come in at the point just before the records are loaded and change the scope. And that's really cool. So this is, of course, public API, so this will not change. But also there are some methods in SQL. It's really easy to understand how this works, and you also can see how to do it more manually. And I also doubt that will change. So SQL is great. Yeah. Well, I think that's it. I don't even have the last slide. So, yeah, thanks. So, questions? Sorry? At the moment, no, except this guy that wrote that blog article. He's testing it a little bit, and he reported one issue, which I fixed, and so, yeah, at the moment, no. But I'm using it for myself, so I will probably keep it updated, at least for, if I have bugs with it, I will fix them.
Do you have any issues with pagination?
No, it shouldn't be a problem because I'm not changing the where clause or the limit or the offset, so it should work the same. But yeah, one should try it before claiming that.
Okay, so
Thanks.
Jan. Please applause. Thank you.